and welcome to our review of Richard the Lionheart, a game set in 12th century England in which players will be either on the team of King Richard or the team of the treacherous brother John.
See, Richard's actually not in this game himself. He's gone to fight in the Crusades, and what players are going to be doing, either as Robin Hood and his merry men, or as people like the Sheriff of Nottingham, is affecting the course of the Crusades.
So, let's talk about the mechanics. These tracks here represent your influence in a game. Your team is going to try to complete one of these tracks to win. This top track here represents the current state of the battles of the Crusades. If King Richard is winning, then so are Robin Hood and his men. But if Saladin is winning, it means John Lockhart has managed to turn the tide of war and their team is going to win. You also have these two tracks at the bottom. One representing King Richard's triumphant return from battle, and one representing the other team getting their hand on his treasure. At any point, reaching the end of one of these tracks will mean victory for that team.
So you're probably wondering how all of those influence tracks get moved. Well, the main meat of the game involves these, the influence cards, and they're going to represent your power both at home and abroad. You can have as many of these cards in your hand at any given time as you want, but you're only going to play 2 in the Crusades turn to try and influence what happens. So during the Crusades phase, your 2 chosen cards are going to go into a Crusades deck, which has 1 of each of these cards on it. And then that deck is going to be shuffled and then dealt back out depending on the number of players. So for example, these banner cards are going to represent what's happening in the battle section of the influence track, while the chests and tapestries are going to represent the king returning home or the king's treasure returning home.
As you can imagine, your ability to affect the Crusades will depend on exactly what cards you have. Each turn, you'll be moving your pieces across this 12th century version of England. Every town you go to has its own actions. These actions usually involve either getting new cards or trading your existing ones. For example, in Chester, you can trade 2 red influence cards for 3 green influence cards and a random influence card. Some towns, like Gloucester, don't require you to trade any influence cards at all. You just take 1 red one and 1 random one automatically. You can also directly gain victory points and coins from the board. For example, in Bristol, if you trade 4 of the same card, you'll get 3 victory points and 3 coins.
So you're going to use those coins every turn to buy something from the marketplace. You can buy things like horses, which let you travel across the map further, or you can buy things like boats, which let you traverse the map's water tiles. You can also buy either an individual or a specific influence card, and the prices for these is going to go up or down depending on which round you're on. However, you can also use your money to influence the Crusades. So if you have any money left after the market phase, you can spend 2 coins and put in an extra card, potentially turning the tide of the battle and the course of history.
Now you may have noticed we mentioned victory points earlier, so why do these matter? Well, you can't actually win the game by just being on the winning team. Instead, you need to be the player on the winning team with the most victory points. You can get these throughout the game, but you can also get them with Edict Cards. These are your secret objectives. The interesting thing about these is they may make you make decisions that aren't in the best interests of your team. For example, this one will give you 1 victory point for every red chest you have in your hand at the end of the game. But those same red chests might be crucial to turning the tide of the Crusade and winning it for your team. So that's the basics of Richard the Lionheart. Now, considering its relative strategic depth and the fact that it has gameplay mechanics such as hidden objectives, it plays out relatively easily and it doesn't take a huge amount of time.
No, it doesn't. For the fact that you can play this game 3v3 with 6 people, it's not actually going to take that much longer at all to go through a round as it would do with 2v2. It also looks lovely. The components are really nice. They're individually modelled. Even in places like this where on the tracker you wouldn't actually need a specific component for Saladin or for Richard, they just add a little bit to the game, make it feel a little bit more exciting. And the board of England is really nice as well. They've taken a few liberties of exactly where different towns are, but overall it's definitely a nice game to touch, a nice game to look at.
Yeah, and the iconography on the cards translates to that as well, with very simple designs, but certainly do enable you to very, very easily glance at them to understand where you are in a game at any given time.
Yeah, and that's really important because one of the best bits about this game is the moments where you're going to do the revealing of the Crusades and what the outcomes are. Now, when you're placing these cards down, as they happen, you're going to look straight at them and you're going to be able to instantly know how many chests there are, how many banners there are, how many different bits of card are going to add up to what victories you're going to get that round. So unlike a game we're going to have to work out numbers or icons and add up and then find out what's happened, straight away with these you know exactly what's happened, so it's always a case of like yes or not.
Or not, for the majority of cases for us. So we spoke a lot in the rules about the team aspect of the game, and that's really where the meat of Richard the Lionheart is. You start the game trying to sort of win out a team victory, but very quickly you start considering the selfish moves and playing it
Say
for
by
yourself.
a mid to late game, you are completely playing differently to how you're playing at the start, because once your team starts winning, you're worried about how you're going to eventually win. One of the good examples of that is that there is an Edict card which one of the players might have, which is to win the game for your team and you'll get points, but only on a specific victory. So for example, if it's to win via the army victory and your team is winning via the chest victory, or the tapestry victory, you're going to have to stop that victory and even pull it back while getting your victory going ahead.
Yeah, so you start the game, and as you play, you can be sort of sitting there acting like you're doing it for the team, but in fact, you're backstabbing them and placing very different cards to what you say you're going to place.
Yeah, because you don't have to tell people what you're going to place. The way that we played, and we couldn't see anything in the rules to tell us otherwise, was that if you're on a team, you show each other your cards if you want to. If you're going to say, oh, look, I've got this, we could do this. And early on, that's the conversation that you have. Later on, you can have those conversations and say that's what you're going to do, and then put in two completely different cards because no one will see what you put in at that stage.
So each round, you also draw event cards, and these cards sometimes just make a track move in a certain direction, but the really fun ones are the ones that make you betray your team for victory points or money.
Yeah, so there will be one that might say, okay, you can put a faction card, an influence card of the opposite side into the game, into the Crusades deck, but you have to do it visibly in front of everyone. So you have to basically play a card for the enemy team. But what you're going to get from that is victory points that just apply to you. And there are other ones that aren't quite as brutal that will just mean that instead of helping out, you'll get victory points. Those are really, really good event cards that make it obvious when you're just going out for yourself.
Yeah, and they work really well at giving the game a sense of change each round. So
yeah, just a small one, right?
Yeah, a small change, but it means that you'll be sitting there not knowing exactly how each round will pan out.
Yeah, and because sometimes they advance these tracks differently, even if you're like winning on one track, you might want to switch over, push a little bit more on the other track because an event will let you move it even further that round and then come back. So we've talked a lot about teams 3v3 or 2v2, which is probably the main way you're going to be playing this game. But there are actually ways to play with 3 and 5 players using a neutral character. So this neutral character is going to play basically trying to even out the odds between both sides. All their edicts are about having to juggle this track rather than getting it from one end to the other. Maybe making it so that Richard's army needs to be near the end, but the King's Treasure track needs to be near the start.
Yeah, and some of the games that I played as a neutral character. And I think personally I preferred it. I prefer playing as a neutral character because it gives you this sense that you're the overseer and you can sort of manipulate all the other players to doing your bidding. It's very balanced as well because in all the neutral characters' edicts, you're not told to do this to make this player win. Everything is very level and you don't ever feel like you're overly helping one player more than the other.
Yeah, that was an interesting game with you being the neutral guy because it was interesting having this one person who plays like a puppet master who is pulling the strings with everyone. I think they're both like foreign powers in that sense, and that's really cool. And I did enjoy that as well. It worked much better than I thought it was going to.
Yeah, I mean, because you guys didn't know what I was doing, you probably felt at various times that I was screwing one over more than the other, but in actuality I was trying to do it. My particular edict was to get our positions on track basically equal in that sense. Like the cool thing about the neutral player is every turn he's going to choose a side, and the side he picks is going to be the side that will either win or lose for him. So he might side with Richard or he might side with John. And if Richard wins, then he technically wins that round as well. At the end of the game, he has to have sided with the winning side to win the game. Which I did not do. No.
So you lost.
I was doing fine on victory points, but I just completely misread the situation and I lost the game.
One thing I will mention about this mode is from the opposite side, it felt a little bit arbitrary. One thing that was happening was that I was playing and Daniel was siding with me, and then next round, maybe he wasn't. Now, Daniel knew why he wasn't, but I really didn't know why he wasn't. It didn't make a lot of sense. And once you're the person that's been, has less players, has less cards to put into this crusade, you feel like your whole round is a little bit worthless because you feel like you can't really stop what's going to happen to you.
It was fun for me, though.
It was fun for you, though.
I got to screw with you.
So we mentioned a little bit earlier that the board can swap over. So the other side of this board is a 2 to 3 player board, which has fewer locations and different actions that you can perform. One thing we found was that the bigger board lets you get victory points in the game more often, which means the Edict cards, which give you victory points at the end, aren't quite as critical to the game. On the other board, there's very few chances to get victory points outside of either buying them outright from the marketplace or from your edict itself. The problem there is that smaller board also doesn't let you change your edict. So if you have an edict that within a few turns you realise you're just never going to be able to perform, you're stuck with it.
But overall, we really like Richard the
Yes.
Lionheart. It's a really good game. It constantly makes you change your strategy as new cards are drawn, as new events are drawn, or as other players play out their own game.
Well, and in your team as well, as your team discuss what you want to do, and you need to decide, is it worth me helping my team and not getting them to attack me about this, or is it worth me just going ahead and lying to them to get what I want this turn?
Yes, you always lied.
Yeah, I lied quite a lot in it, and that's a game that that's something I really like about the game. I can lie, I can choose not to lie, I can help my opponents when I want to, I can help my friends when I want to. Loads of little tiny decisions that make the game interesting, even though really what you're doing every turn is placing down 2 different coloured cards.
Yeah, it's remarkable just how dynamic each round feels. Being the mechanics aren't overly complex, being there isn't hundreds of pieces. It's a simple game that manages to feel alive, and that's really quite remarkable.
But as remarkable as it is, there are a few problems with this game which are really going to apply to specific people, I think. I mean, we're going to say right now, I think we would definitely say this is one of our favourites.
Yeah.
It's a good game to play. It's a fun game to play in groups. There are some reasons you might not want to pick up Richard, though.
So while it is a great game, and I really do think it's a great game for 3 players and up, I don't get the point of the 2-player mode. The 2-player mode has the problem of you haven't got that sort of, are they going to betray me? Are they going to be treacherous? You don't have the sense of the neutral player. It's just very static, and it loses a lot of the appeal to the game.
There are far better 2-player games like this that actually work and are designed around playing for 2 players. As long as you have 3, 5, 6, it's going to work fine, and the neutral player is going to make that interesting even with an uneven amount of teams. But with 2 players, not so much. There is one other thing that I really need to mention about this game, and one thing that frustrated me all the way through in it. It's going to sound minor, but the real problem I have with this game is that these miniatures, these red miniatures, represent Robin Hood, who is a character who is green and has always been green forever. It's really weird. You have a picture of him and he's green, but on the board, he's not. The bad guys are green. That sounds like a really silly thing to nitpick.
It played with us all during the entire game. You're just mentally tuned. You're thinking, Robin Hood, green.
Yeah, so you change cards and you even put down the wrong cards because you're thinking, well, I'm Mario, I'm going to be green. I'm Robin Hood, I'm going to be green. I'm the sheriff, I'm going to be red. Why they did this, I cannot comprehend at all. And another very important thing to point out, like, I can get over Robin being red, and I did, and after a few games I did get used to it. I still occasionally made that mistake in my head, but never on my cards. But one thing that you probably won't be able to get over if you're colourblind is the fact that these are the 2 primary colours in the game, and they are used throughout the entire game. Red-green colourblind is one of the major
it's one of the more common
colourblind things that you can have. So yeah, I don't think I'd recommend this to anyone who has problems like that.
So as we said, it absolutely is a playabilist favourite. That is, of course, unless you only have 2 players or you are colourblind.
Yeah, those are very specific situations. Otherwise, it's a really, really fun team-based game with just that little edge to it that the secret objectives give. It's 45 to 60 minutes long, and the rules took us about half an hour to really pick up, and we didn't really take the rule book again for the other games that we played, which is great. That's all down to that really cool, clear iconography. So yes, it's a very, very good game. Let us know if you played Richard, what you thought of it, anything that you liked. Did you get as annoyed by me as the fact that these colours were different? Please just comment below, like our video if you liked it, and subscribe if you want more.
And I'm going to go paint these a different colour.
Yes, paint them all blue. Actually, the neutral players are blue.
Thank you.